Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 23rd, and today I'm taking a break from talking politics. And I listened on the radio the other day and I heard this article about divorce rates and that the cause of a lot of divorce is caused by daughters. Now, just not any daughter, just the firstborn child. If the firstborn child is a daughter, it's been proven that causes the divorce rate to go up. Now, that struck home with me because my firstborn child was a daughter, and divorce never came into the picture in my family. So I don't understand what the big deal is about the firstborn daughter and the divorce rates. So I had to look into this, and this is what I found. I found that there have been studies conducted since the 1980s that provide strong evidence that a couple's firstborn being a girl increases the likelihood of their subsequently splitting up. At first, the researchers thought that this was something called sun preference. That's not the shining sun at night. That's sun as a male child. Now, that's a phenomenon in its most extreme form. But the research into that area never proved anything, so we can throw that out. The divorce is not caused by male preference. Anyhow, after several attempts at figuring out why, if the firstborn was a daughter, why the parents divorced. Why was the divorce rate different than when the firstborn was a male? And this is what they found. It took them a while. It took them a couple of different years and a couple of different groups studying this thing. But then two professors, one at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and the other one at Georgia State University in Atlanta, confirmed that having a firstborn female does increase the divorce rate. But unlike other studies, they started looking at the age at which the divorce took place. And it turns out that when the daughters reached the teenage years, ages 13 to 18, that's when most of the divorces took place. They found that the daughter divorce risk emerges at that particular time. Apparently, daughters up to the age of 12 really don't cause the parents any significant problem. Now, if the fathers were likely to take off because they preferred sons, they probably wouldn't wait 13 years to do it. So it was very interesting to figure out why, at the age of 13, did the daughter's actions cause the divorce? Or was it the built-in prejudice of the fathers that caused these divorces at the age of 13 to 18 of their daughters? So that's what the researchers really started to look at. And this is what they found. The mothers, the daughters, and the fathers had different views of how life should be when the daughter turned 13 or so. And maybe this is because of the menstrual cycle, or the fact that fathers worry about their daughters getting into trouble, sexual trouble. And the mothers believe that the child should be left to their own devices and to try to live a normal teenage life, whatever that means. So apparently the conflict between the mothers and the fathers is how the daughters are being brought up, what they're allowed to do, what they might do, and the worrying that fathers seem to take in the lives of their daughters. And the mothers who can't understand why the father worries so much about the daughter, when the mother feels that the daughter's actions are acceptable. Or maybe the father thinks that the daughter's actions are acceptable and the mother doesn't. Turned out that parents with these daughters disagreed more about the way they should raise their children and actually expressed positive attitudes toward divorce. And teenage daughters reported worse relationships with their fathers, but not with their mothers. I find that to be a very strange situation. I never encountered any of these problems. But of course, maybe we lived in a strange household. There was a lot of love in our household. As good researchers often do, they start looking for other reasons why the fathers might be acting the way they are. And it turns out that if the father had a sister, the divorce rate was not any higher than those families that had all sons, or where the son was the older child. So having grown up with a sister meant that these men had a different idea of how teenage girls are supposed to behave, or were allowed to do, or what their lives are all about. So the divorce rate was entirely different if they had a sister. And then I find that to be extremely interesting, because I didn't have a sister when I grew up. My wife had a sister. The studies also showed that if the parents had traditional attitudes toward the gender role, then during the teenage years, they would experience higher increases of divorce odds from their teenage daughters. I guess that meant if the parents were old-fashioned and they believed that perhaps that mothers should stay home with their children and not work, or whatever differences have come into your life at the time at which your older child becomes independent and you can't deal with her attitude toward her independence, then you have a problem, which causes, of course, your wife and yourself, or your husband and yourself, the battle over what we expect from our child. Anyhow, I found this whole thing very, very interesting. So having said all of this, if you look at the marriage rate in the United States, I think that the difference between having a firstborn daughter or a firstborn male is negligible, since only about 60% of the couples that get married these days stay together. And that's a pretty sad statistic. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you in the morning. Bye.